that I think are pretty important to notice. Now, the internet community has grown. The internet has grown by adopting these communities, and that have a certain sort of cultural effects in the internet, and a sort of an etiquette or a style that's been propagated. Now, one of the problems is that this culture may change radically as things grow, because if you say it's growing, it's doubling every year, that means a year from now, half of the people using the network will be brand new, will be new people. So the culture may evolve. A lot of the people that come in sort of look around and see what's acceptable behavior and what's not, and adopt that culture. But there will be people that don't do that, and things will be strange. But one of the things that happens is that there's this idea of flames. People will do things in email, send messages in email that are very rude, things they would never think of doing in person. And this is sort of called flaming. If you send a very angry message, this is called a flame. And now people have gotten to the point where in an email message, they'll start out sort of gentle, and they'll say, now I'm really upset about it. Flame on. They'll just type flame on. And then type a really angry message, and then say flame off, and says, now you know what I think of that. And so that's the sort of a cultural thing, that it's sort of okay to flame if you announce that that's what you're going to do. Okay. Another thing that we're beginning to see is junk email, and this is where somebody sends them. We have all these mailing lists and news groups, and they're sort of identified by topic. And so the idea is that if you're interested in aviation or science fiction or something, you join that news group, and then all the messages will be about that topic. But people have begun to send junk messages, advertising or other things that they will send to a news group that are not particularly related to that. Or maybe they somehow just get your address off of, your email address off of watching messages you send to a news group, and just send directly to you some junk email that you're not particularly interested in. And so this is going to become a large problem that we need to figure out some ways to deal with. There's some things about you can filter your incoming mail, and I think that the comments that have been made earlier about that are pretty right on. You're going to have to set up some filters to say, what are the stuff that's coming into your mailbox do you actually want to look at? Because if you get more than about 100 messages a day, you just can't deal with anything else. So, and you're going to have to be very selective about what comes into your mailbox that you actually spend any time on. Another thing that's happened recently is a concept that's been called spamming. I don't know why, but the idea is that if you take a message that's basically junk email and you send it to all of the news groups you can think of, and so essentially bothering as many possible people with your stupid message, that this is very unacceptable behavior, yet some people do it. It's like sending an advertisement or direct mail advertisement to a lot of people, even though you know most of them aren't interested in it. If you get like 1% return, you're going to make money. And that's sort of the same idea that these people are doing spamming, and this is very frowned on. One of the things that's about the network, though, is that it's very easy for the people who get this and are upset by it to come back at you. And so that even though you send out one of these messages, your mailbox may then be flooded by complaints. So you have to be careful about this. The other general thing is advertising. Advertising is thought of in sort of a funny way, in that it's sort of okay to talk about products in message groups that have specifically said that that's what they're interested in. But it's not generally okay to talk about to send advertising. It's much more of a consumer's pull than a seller's push atmosphere. And that if you put up a web page that includes advertising, that's thought of as okay, because somebody actually went to pull that down. They were interested enough in your web page, there must have been enough value there besides the advertising that they were interested in it. But if you try to push advertising information out through the network via email, this is generally a bad thing. Anyway. All right, so this thing is growing tremendously. It's been growing by these communities that, like I say, when sort of roughly 20% of the people in the community are involved in it, then the whole community has to somehow get involved in it. And if we talked about, well, maybe there's 10 or 20 million someplace in there users of the internet now, and it doubles in a year.
World or in the U.S.?
Well, maybe if we take the world versus the U.S., it'll be another year. But yeah, it's sort of like, Yeah, if there's 10 or 20 million users worldwide now, and let's say half of them are in the U.S., then just add a year to what this takes. But in a year or 2 years, 20% of the U.S. population is going to be on the internet if these trends continue. And that says the whole U.S. as a community now is going to be in a mode where essentially everybody's going to have to use it if they're going to keep up with the pace of social change, with the pace of information flow. This is going to be a very significant effect. And so this really becomes now a force to be dealt with throughout society. I mean, politicians are going to have to deal with it, newspapers are going to have to deal with it, businesses are going to have to deal with it. And it's just really going to be a very substantial change in the way we conduct our lives.
When did you say that 20% threshold was going to be hit?
Well, I mean, there's some argument about how many people actually use the internet now. The estimates, like they say, were between 10 and 30 million. And that may be worldwide versus just in the U.S. So let's say a conservative, a low estimate might be that there's 5 million users in the U.S. right now. So you just work that out against the population, maybe that means it's 3 years from now that we get 20%. If you take a high estimate, you say there's 30 million worldwide and maybe 2/3 are in the U.S., and maybe 20 million in the U.S. now, it means next year we'll be in this mode.
I just wanted to point out that the percentage of people using the internet today is greater than the percentage that knew how to read 200 years ago. Think about what that means.
Right. Now there's one little thing I should mention about these growth curves. And then we get on this exponential growth curve and we say, okay, it's going to double every year, and then we have 20 million now, then we'll have 40 million, then we'll have 80 million, da, da, da. Well, it can't go on forever because someplace up there at the top, we should draw a line across. It's the total population of the Earth. And somebody drew one of these exponential curves, and they drew that in, and it crosses in the year 2010. So presumably things will actually slow down a little bit before we get there. This is the number of domain names that are registered in the com domain, like tm.com for Times Mirror or whatever. So this says there's now about 50,000 domain names in the com domain, and since this is essentially a straight line, that means there's exponential growth in the number of domain names as well.
Time for tech community to look.
Well,
Who's out there?
Well, I think of course there's extremes, and I'm sure we could go find the 90-year-old man that's on the internet, and the grandmothers that are doing their genealogy research over the internet and so on. And we can find young people that are on the internet, people that are just learned how to use a Macintosh and can barely type are on the internet as well. But I think by and large, it's been the say 18 to 30-year-old male computer programmers that have been the first group on the internet. But that's changed a lot from the early days, and that's expanded quite a bit. Kids or teenagers that have been lured into unsavory activities, or running away from home, or gone into prostitution by having read a message, by communicating with people over the internet. They've been led to this terrible behavior. At one level, the internet is just a communication mechanism. It doesn't say anything about the content, and it's just like a telephone system or a printing press. And it's up to the people who put the content on to be responsible about whether it's useful, society-enhancing content or destructive content. And I think if somebody says, well, this was a bad thing that happened and there should be a law against it, I think we have to think about how we would deal with that matter if it happened over the telephone, or if it happened via somebody printing flyers and handing them out in the neighborhood, or somebody writing something in a newspaper. That the same laws, we should, to whatever extent possible, we should use the same legal mechanisms, the same laws to apply to the internet as we apply to any other communication mechanism.
You talked about internet culture. Someone I heard was talking that today's internet culture is the frontier mentality, the outlaw mentality, the people who went into the frontier, but that tomorrow those frontiersmen would be going on to a new frontier, and the internet would very much more have a different settler culture, that the very culture of the internet will change dramatically as more people get on it.
Well-
What do you think about that, and what do you see as the cultural changes in internet?